Before we begin, viewer discretion is advised. This content is for entertainment purposes. What happens when the most universally beloved man in entertainment, a figure known for kindness, positivity, and lifting others up, walks onto a talk show expecting a friendly conversation only to encounter relentless attacks on his character from a host with a clear agenda? What happens when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the man with an infectious smile, genuine warmth, a devotion to fans, massive charitable efforts, and private visits to sick children, sits down on The View, only to discover that Joy Behar isn't there to ask questions about his work, but rather to orchestrate a systematic character assassination based on fabricated controversies and imagined accusations? This isn't just another awkward celebrity interview. This isn't a moment of tension that gets smoothed over with apologies. This is the story of how Joy Behar, driven by some inexplicable desire to tear down someone universally loved, spent 30 brutal minutes attacking Johnson's masculinity, philanthropy, authenticity, and even his political views with accusations she couldn't substantiate. And how Johnson, with the patience of a saint pushed beyond reason, finally reached the point where even infinite grace has limits. By the time he walked off the stage with his dignity intact, millions of viewers would witness what true strength really looks like, not muscles or movie roles, but the courage to stand up to cruelty while maintaining compassion for the person inflicting it. The morning began with electric anticipation at the View studios. Everyone, from production assistants to audience members to the hosts themselves, buzzed with excitement. This was The Rock, not just a movie star, but a cultural phenomenon. A man whose social media posts about gratitude and hard work inspired millions. A man whose candidness about his struggles with depression had helped destigmatize mental health conversations. A man whose legendary work ethic and kindness had made him universally admired. Johnson arrived radiating warmth, his megawatt smile lighting up the studio. Fresh off promoting a blockbuster already breaking box office records, he seemed relaxed, energized, and ready to connect with people, make them laugh, and inspire them with his journey from having $7 in his pocket to becoming one of the highest-paid actors in the world. He wore a simple yet perfectly fitted suit, making his imposing frame approachable rather than intimidating. His demeanor radiated that unique blend of confidence and humility that had endeared him to fans across demographics. What Johnson did not know, and had no reason to suspect, was that Joy Behar had spent the previous evening preparing what she believed would be her tough interview moment. Not questions about his craft, his business acumen, or even legitimate political challenges, but a premeditated assault on his image, an attempt to reveal what she convinced herself was a facade hiding toxic masculinity and Hollywood hypocrisy. In reality, she had prepared a demonstration of her own capacity for cruelty. The set glowed with familiar warm lighting as Johnson entered with thunderous applause. The audience rose as one, not out of obligation, but genuine excitement. Phones were raised to capture the moment. People were smiling, cheering, radiating the kind of positive energy Johnson himself had always embodied. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dwayne Johnson," Whoopi Goldberg announced, her voice carrying genuine warmth. Johnson waved to the crowd, his charismatic presence filling the studio. This was what he did naturally, make people feel good simply by being himself. "Thank you so much for having me," he said, settling into his chair with easy confidence born from decades of connecting with people. The other hosts, Sunny Hostin, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, responded with genuine smiles and warmth. Even Joy Behar seemed pleasant at first, though a careful observer might notice something calculating in her eyes, suggesting her warmth was performance, not reality. "So, Dwayne, tell us about the new movie. I hear it's already breaking records." Johnson's enthusiasm was infectious and authentic. "I'm incredibly grateful. The fans have been amazing. Working with this cast has been a dream. We wanted to create something special, something families could enjoy, action and heart in equal measure." "That's wonderful," chimed Sarah. "And your social media posts about filming were hilarious. That video of you in that tiny trailer had me laughing for days." Johnson laughed, the kind that makes everyone around him smile involuntarily. Well, when you're 6'5" and built like I am, even the biggest trailer feels like a dollhouse. But you've got to laugh at yourself. For several minutes, the conversation flowed naturally. Johnson spoke about his daughters with obvious devotion, his production company's commitment to diverse storytelling, and his philosophy of choosing roles that inspire rather than simply profit. The audience was captivated, hanging on every word. This was the authentic, humble Dwayne Johnson that everyone loved. But then, Joy Behar shifted, and something fundamental changed. Those with experience in live TV felt it, a subtle shift from friendly conversation to something darker. Dwayne, Joy said, her tone suddenly stripped of warmth, I have to ask you something that's been bothering me for a while. Johnson's expression remained pleasant. Years of media training had taught him composure, but a subtle tension suggested he recognized a threat. Sure, Joy, he replied, carefully. What's on your mind? Joy leaned forward, her body language shifting from host to prosecutor. I've been watching your career very closely, and I'm concerned about the message you're sending to young men, especially young men. The studio fell silent. The audience, moments ago buzzing with excitement, sensed something deeply wrong. Johnson's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his voice remained remarkably calm. Joy, I think you might be drastically simplifying the characters I play. Most of my roles are about protecting family, standing up for what's right, overcoming obstacles with determination and teamwork. Joy laughed, not humorously, but with contempt. Come on, Dwayne. You're selling an image of masculinity that's outdated, regressive, and dangerous. Young boys see you and think they need to solve problems with strength rather than emotional intelligence. The tension was palpable. Sunny looked genuinely uncomfortable. Sarah stared at her notes as if they might provide escape. Whoopi weighed intervention, but Joy seemed energized by the discomfort she created. And another thing, she continued, this whole people's champion persona on social media, isn't it disingenuous? You're worth hundreds of millions, living in mansions, flying private jets, and yet you try to relate to working-class people? Johnson's hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. Joy, I grew up in a working-class family. My mother cleaned houses. My father was a professional wrestler. We were evicted multiple times. I know struggle. I never forget where I came from, and I use my platform to amplify stories of those still struggling. Joy rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go with the charity work. Another PR move. That was the moment something shifted in Johnson. The easygoing charm remained, but beneath it, steel emerged. Joy, he said, his voice calm, but carrying undeniable weight. I've dealt with critics my entire career. That's fine. But what you're doing now isn't criticism. It's cruelty. Pure, calculated cruelty. Attacking someone with lies. Trying to tear down everything I've worked for. For what? Joy's face faltered, a flicker of doubt. But she wasn't ready to back down. No, I'm just asking tough questions. No, Johnson said, shaking his head slowly. Your job is to inform and entertain. What you're doing is weaponizing hatred. There's a difference, and if you cannot see it, I feel sorry for you. Whoopi attempted to intervene. Maybe a commercial break. No, Joy cut in sharply. The audience deserves to see the real Dwayne Johnson when he doesn't get his way. Johnson looked around the studio, at the mortified hosts, shocked crew, horrified audience. His voice calm, yet heartbreaking. Joy, I feel sorry for you. This sustained attack on someone who's done nothing to you says nothing about me and everything about you. You're so consumed with tearing people down that you cannot see the good in anything. Joy scoffed, save the amateur psychology lesson. Johnson continued, voice growing stronger. I've worked with charities, visited sick children, tried to make the world better. You sit here, in front of millions, trying to destroy that for good television, for viral clips. Joy's face reddened. You're not the saint you pretend to be. I never claimed to be, Johnson replied. I've made mistakes, faced struggles, battled depression, and learned from it. But what you're doing here isn't accountability. It's character assassination, and I will not participate. Joy taunted, but desperation crept in. Can't handle criticism? Johnson's eyes held unmistakable pity. Criticism would be about my movies, business, or real political decisions. What you've done for 30 minutes is based on fabricated lies. There's a difference, and if you cannot see it, I feel sorry for you. The other hosts stared horrified. The audience was silent, shocked. Johnson stood up slightly, dignified, deliberate. "I think we're done here." He unclipped his microphone. The metallic sound echoed like a gunshot. Every movement's measured. And then the people's champion, beloved by millions, walked off. The audience erupted in thunderous applause, recognizing a man who had endured cruelty and emerged with dignity intact. Joy Behar was stunned, realizing that infinite patience has limits, and cruelty reveals more about the inflictor than the target. Backstage, Johnson's team surrounded him, concerned. He waved them off. "I'm fine. I said what needed to be said." Within minutes, clips went viral. Johnson trended worldwide. Fellow celebrities and fans rallied in support, praising his grace under pressure. The View issued apologies. Joy Behar was left to face the fallout. Johnson, as always, chose dignity over revenge. When asked later, he said, "Sometimes people are dealing with their own pain, and it comes out in The cameras kept rolling, capturing Joy Behar's stunned silence. For the first time in her career, the host who thrived on control and confrontation was unmoored, left to stare at the aftermath of a confrontation she had miscalculated. Her earlier confidence, the smirk of someone certain she'd exposed the real Dwayne Johnson, had evaporated completely. The other hosts were frozen, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and disbelief painting their expressions. Sunny Hostin looked appalled, unable to hide her disgust. Sarah Haynes looked mortified, as though ashamed she had ever been part of this setup. Whoopi Goldberg, usually the voice of equilibrium, looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. Backstage, Johnson's team circled him immediately, voices overlapping in frantic concern. Managers, publicists, assistants, all speaking at once, checking on his emotional state, assessing potential fallout. Johnson waved them off gently, his composure intact despite the ordeal. His hands trembled slightly, the only visible sign of the emotional toll the confrontation had taken. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "I said what needed to be said. There's nothing to apologize for." Meanwhile, clips of the interview began circulating online. Within minutes, Dwayne Johnson was trending worldwide. Millions of viewers were sharing footage of his dignified exit and the relentless attacks he had endured. Social media erupted with support. Fans, celebrities, and casual viewers alike praising his grace under pressure. Kevin Hart posted a heartfelt message highlighting Johnson's restraint. Emily Blunt shared a story of his kindness on set. People who had never met him felt compelled to defend someone who had always represented the best of humanity in the public eye. Back on the set, the producers called for an emergency commercial break. Whoopi Goldberg turned to Joy Behar, her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "What the hell was that?" she asked, voice tight with controlled fury. "We don't ambush guests. We don't attack people with lies. What were you thinking?" Joy tried to defend herself. "I was just asking tough questions." Sunny cut in, her voice trembling. "Those weren't questions. That was character assassination. You attacked a man who has done nothing but good in this world, using lies and manufactured controversies." Sarah nodded, visibly shaken. "I'm ashamed to have been sitting at this table. Dwayne Johnson is genuinely good, and you tried to destroy him for no reason." When the show returned from commercial, the energy in the studio had shifted entirely. Whoopi Goldberg addressed the camera with unusual gravity. "We want to apologize to Dwayne Johnson and to our audience for what just occurred. That's not the kind of conversation we want on this show. It's not representative of our values." Joy remained silent, the earlier aggression replaced by dawning comprehension. She had misjudged everything. The moment she realized she had underestimated not just Johnson, but the audience's perception of him was almost painful to watch. Within hours, the incident dominated every entertainment news cycle. Analysis pieces poured in, the overwhelming consensus condemning the tactics used against Johnson while celebrating his measured response. Media critics, long complaining about the degradation of daytime television, called it a watershed moment, a clear example of audiences craving genuine connection over manufactured conflict. Celebrities rallied on social media, sharing stories and praise for Johnson's conduct. The View's ratings of The View spiked immediately, but the long-term damage to Joy Behar's credibility was undeniable. Sponsors expressed concern. Network executives scrambled. Meanwhile, Johnson remained untouched by the chaos he'd endured, his character proving unbreakable. He never attacked Joy publicly, never sought revenge or retribution. In later interviews, he simply said, "Sometimes people are dealing with their own pain, and it comes out in unfortunate ways. I hope she finds peace." The incident became a case study in media classes, a perfect example of how not to conduct an interview and how to maintain dignity under unjust attack. Students watched, captivated, as Johnson defended himself with grace, responded to lies with truth, and ultimately chose his mental health and self-respect over remaining in a toxic situation. The lesson was undeniable. Sometimes the strongest action isn't to fight harder, it's to walk away with your head held high. And Dwayne Johnson had done exactly that. Once again, proving why he is called the people's champion, not because he avoids adversity, but because of the way he handles it when it finds him. In the days that followed, the conversation didn't fade. Clips of Johnson's calm, measured responses and ultimate exit circulated endlessly, dominating headlines and sparking discussions across social media, news outlets, and talk shows alike. The narrative was clear. Here was a man who had faced an unprovoked attack and responded not with anger, but with composure and dignity. Fans shared personal stories of how Johnson had inspired them through his films, his philanthropic work, or even his simple acts of kindness. Many recounted the first time his words or actions had motivated them to persevere, to be better, to help someone else. These stories went viral, a ripple effect of positivity and admiration that only reinforced what millions already knew. Johnson's influence extended far beyond the silver screen. Meanwhile, Joy Behar found herself at the center of a storm entirely of her own making. Commentary poured in, analyzing her behavior from every angle. Was it ambition? Ego? A desire for a viral moment? Critics were nearly unanimous. The attack had crossed the line. Public opinion, often fickle, had turned decidedly against her. Sponsors expressed concern quietly but pointedly, and network executives began internal discussions about maintaining the credibility of their programming. Through it all, Johnson remained remarkably composed. Interviews, appearances, and social media statements were measured, kind, and reflective. He didn't gloat. He didn't retaliate. Instead, he focused on what he had always prioritized, inspiring others, supporting those in need, and using his platform for good. When asked about the incident in later interviews, his response was concise yet profound. "I've been fortunate to have a platform," he said, "and with that comes responsibility. Not to prove anything to anyone, not to fight back for the sake of winning, but to lift others up. That's what matters. People will come for you sometimes, not because of anything you've done, but because of what they're wrestling with inside themselves. I hope she finds peace." The public admired him even more for it. Analysts noted that in a world where conflict often drives engagement, Johnson had demonstrated that strength could also mean restraint, that dignity could speak louder than rage, and that true power is measured not by dominance over others, but by mastery over oneself. In classrooms, seminars, and corporate workshops, clips of the confrontation became teaching tools. Media studies professors dissected the interview as an example of how not to attack someone under the guise of accountability. Leadership coaches highlighted Johnson's response as a model for emotional intelligence and conflict management. Psychologists commented on the psychological strength required to face unfair attacks without losing composure. And among the audience, the lesson resonated deeply. People didn't just admire Johnson, they learned from him. They saw that standing firm in your values, maintaining your integrity, and prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being were acts of courage in themselves. In the end, the incident became a defining moment, not for the cruelty that occurred, but for the grace with which it was met. Dwayne Johnson had faced a public trial of character, endured it without compromise, and walked away with his dignity intact. That single act became a symbol, a reminder, and a lesson for millions around the world. Truth strength is measured not by how loudly you fight, but by how gracefully you rise above injustice. And for Johnson, life went on. Not interrupted, not diminished, but enriched by the clarity of his principles and the unwavering support of the people who believed in him.